Yes, Jack is already insane.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right.
No, absolutely not.
In my opinion, the actual supernatural element of this film doesn't work for me as
No.
well as I think it could have.
No.
And now time for The Viewing Room with Adam and Ethan.
Welcome to the viewing room, where we talk about films new and old, local and global. Man, my voice sounded good for that one. I'm gonna
Gotta get the low voice.
I know. I'm gonna listen to the episode again just so I can hear that
Yes.
like little ringtone. Today we're gonna be talking about The Shining. Good movie. I'm gonna warn you though. I have some points that may be deemed controversial, and I don't think there's some aspects in this film that I don't think it's as much as a masterpiece as other people say it is. Okay? And I want to curse everything I'm about to say. Preface everything I say that I think this is a good movie, and I want to state very clearly that a horror film coming out in 1980 like this is revolutionary in a bunch of different ways, bringing new ideas to the table. Horror movies aren't like they are today, like full of
movies have changed a lot.
Gore and guts and stuff like that. And this is a psychological horror with certain elements that realistically paved the way for a bunch of things. And this movie is going to be always a culture statement in horror, the horror genre, and it's ingrained in pop culture, right? Like the first time I saw it was in Ready Player One when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Seeing that movie. Isn't that like a weird thing before I even saw this movie for the first time?
Yeah.
So I just want to say that there's aspects of this film that I do not like.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about them today and explain why I don't think they work. But you cannot deny that this film is incredibly prominent in the film world for so many reasons. Okay?
I don't know. Further to that, I would say that like Stanley Kubrick is amazing.
Yes.
But this is not his best work.
Sure. This is his first horror film.
Yeah, but I just feel like it's not as polished as some other Stanley Kubrick work.
Sure.
But
there is a lot of takes. It's obviously the Stanley Kubrick thing. Stanley Cooper. Why did I say Stanley Cooper? I have no idea. There's Stanley Kubrick thing. I was reading this thing where Scatman Crothers, who played like the head chef for I guess Dick Halloran, or the other guy who can shine. Essentially, he went from this movie to one of Clint Eastwood's movies.
Oh boy, that's the difference.
So obviously, we all know in the film world that Stanley Kubrick is a director famous for taking hundreds of takes sometimes to do a shot because he wants to, which is jarring for a lot of actors, especially people who are new to the craft or aren't used to that.
Yeah.
And Clint Eastwood's kind of like a guy who's like first take, let's go kind of guy.
Yeah, he's very much there.
So apparently, Scatman Crothers like cried on set after one of his first scenes with Clint Eastwood because he was like, "Oh my God, I don't have to do like 70 takes of that." And he also cried on the set of The Shining because
he had to do 70 takes. Yeah. I don't blame you.
Yeah. So obviously, we're talking about The Shining. Released May 23rd, 1980. I tried looking up facts that day, and a lot of it was just like The Shining was released, but I did find Neil Burton.
I was like, Neil Parton. What relation of Dolly Parton is that?
Neil Burton won the ABC Masters Bowling Tournament that day.
You heard it here, folks. Neil Parton won the ABC Masters Bowling.
Yeah, well, that fact, I think, is just as good as this movie. Okay, so released with a budget of 19 million USD.
19 million only.
19 million. 1980,
True.
Like early horror films.
True.
Horror films, notorious, can put lower money towards them and they can gross a lot more in return.
True.
You know what I mean?
Well, you can get away with a lot of cheesier stuff generally in a horror movie.
This is also 1980 money.
True.
1980s money, sorry. And my other point with that too is I think it's polarizing because now we're also super used to the big budget movies being 300 and 400 million nowadays.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So when we think of like pop culture films that are like ingrained in us now, like say like the Avengers,
Yeah.
you know, budget of 250 million, you know, that's crazy, but we're kind of used to that because that's how much it costs to get the special
Yep.
effects and the name actors and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, that is an interesting point too, where I think I was surprised, and it was considered not. It wasn't considered a flop, but it wasn't considered a huge success.
How much did it gross?
45.
45. Okay.
Yeah, like double the return. I guess.
Yeah, I
whatever,
mean
but
that's not. They didn't lose money, but they didn't really make a loss.
and you
right?
wouldn't think a film that's regarded today by some people as one of the best films or one of the best horror films of all time to, you know, to only have grossed that much, right?
I mean, it just shows how things can grow outside of the box. How the box office isn't everything all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like there's a lot of movies that when they were released, it's like this is, but then afterwards it just grows in the cult following, and you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we talked about that in our Fight Club episode.
Yes, that's right.
You know, that one was considered a failure.
Yeah.
That one was considered a flop coming out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they started selling copies of the DVD.
Yeah.
And they started selling more copies of the DVD, and it kept growing, right? So
Yeah.
that is a comparison in my mind.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say thank you to Reed here, who's in the studio with us. Thank you for coming on and producing our episode today. Means a lot. Gary's gone on a little camping trip. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. There's no Maggie as well, you know. I can deal with no Gary, but no Maggie, you know. When you walk through the gate, there's no, you know, furry Maggie, you know, running up, getting pets, and walking you into the studio, you know.
Or furry Gary.
Yeah, but he doesn't run up to you for pets. Well, not always.
Runs behind you for pets. We have to make sure we show him this before we air that so it doesn't look really bad afterwards. Obviously directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
It was his idea. He actually purchased the rights to...
Right, because that's the other thing that I think not a lot of people realize is it's based on the Stephen King novel.
Yes. I think most people know that.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Well,
No.
Yeah. Notoriously, Stephen King hates it or doesn't think it's the right option.
This is one of the things that I was really reading about when I was doing my research. And from what I have read, they changed kind of the emphasis of the story, sort of, in that, like, the book was a lot more, and you can do this in the written medium a lot better than in the visual medium. It was a lot more on the psychological front, and this is psychological horror for a movie, as far as movies go, but it was even more. And I think that's easier because, like, when you have, you know, unspoken thoughts, when it's first person written, it's really hard to do that in a film format. When you have that internal dialogue, that internal monologue, that, you know, we're always in our heads thinking, right? And that the thinking is in words. And so it's easy to write what somebody's thinking, but it's really hard to show that, right? And it takes good acting, which in this movie, you know, but I think that's one of the, and also they changed Jack Nicholson's character slightly from the book. So in the books, he redeemed himself more near the end. I guess he was fighting kind of the psychosis, I guess you could say. He was fighting the psychosis more, and like in the end, he kind of like had a moment of lucidity, and he's like, "Hey, run away," you know, like, instead of in this one where he just outsmarted him, like the kid outsmarted him.
Sure.
So I don't know, in that regard, and it's hard because when I read a book and then watch the movies based on a book, I always hate the movies. Not always. 95% of the time I hate the movies because they always leave things out. And if the book is the story, you know and you love that story, then it's really hard to, like, feel like the movie does it justice. But then you see a movie and then you read the book and it's like, but that movie is the story that you know now. And the book is different. And so I haven't read the book. So that's probably why I have a higher opinion of this book or of this movie than somebody who's read the book first, maybe. But I don't know.
Sure.
I think it's important when you're making those adaptations to try and find the best way possible to adapt it. Because I don't know.
Well, Stanley Kubrick did actually purchase like the rights to make the screenplay, and Stephen King had written a screenplay, but Stanley Kubrick didn't use a sentence from it because he thinks he's a very weak writer in that sense. And I think that goes back to touch on your point that you were making, where you were saying, maybe you could quote it directly, but you said you were talking about how hard it is to act a certain way compared to writing it.
Well,
Right.
it's
What was your exact quote on that?
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I basically was just saying that when you have that internal dialogue, it's easy to write that, but it's hard to visually act that.
Right.
Because, like, the number of words that we have in the English language or any language vastly outnumbers the different looks that you can do with mainly your eyes and your face, and and so it's just hard to show those differences in emotions and thoughts in the visual medium.
Yeah, and I think on that same point too is even that written dialogue from a screenplay to an actor. It's you can show the things on the face and act those out, and that's one of the things too. Like, maybe I'm gonna jump back and forth here, so bear with me. But they say like in a low budget film or short film or something, the worst thing you can do is have lots of dialogue, because
for sure,
your cheap actors or inexperienced actors, whatever you want to call it, because you're not getting Jack Nicholson to do your 5-minute student film. You know what I mean? So they're like, okay, if you're gonna have these actors talking and doing whatever, then limit the dialogue, focus more on reaction shots, facial expressions, because you're gonna get more of a performance. Well, and that is challenging for an actor to do that dialogue, because if they're like, oh my God, Danny, your dad's crazy, don't go near him. You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
it's a lot harder.
And that's where a really good actor shines through, is they can do one of two things. One of two things. They can either take the written dialogue and do it exactly as it was written, but and make it seem natural. Or more likely, what I would prefer whenever I'm working on short films is they take that dialogue that you wrote and use it as a guide and make it sound more natural. Because theoretically, if the actor is doing their job, they understand the character, they understand where they're at in the story, and they understand what that character is feeling, and so they understand why the character is saying what they're saying. So they should be able to make it seem more natural if they're doing their job and embodying that character.
Exactly. And, I do think it also comes down to writing, for sure. Reed and I went and saw Venom last night, and obviously completely different genre, but I think Tom Hardy is a great actor. I think he's kind of limited by some of the writing in that movie. I'm not going to talk about my thoughts on Venom, but that's just an example. Is you can definitely, as an actor, be limited, and some directors and stuff, especially director-writer combos, they don't want you to stick away from the source material sometime. Personally, me, when I'm working with an actor, or at least in my experiences, I'm kind of like, okay, your character, you go with the flow in some capacity, right? Some directors aren't like that at all, but...
Well, and I think that works well when you're an experienced director like you or I. I mean, relatively inexperienced compared to these people, and writers. because, it's so hard to write dialogue. Dialogue is one of the hardest things to write.
For sure.
And to make it sound natural. And so, but then it shines through in some movies, like, Good Will Hunting, for example, with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. I remember reading an interview or watching an interview with them where they were talking about writing it, and they were literally acting out the scenes and then transcribing it instead of writing it and then trying to interpret it, right? Yeah. And so that shines through because they're phenomenal actors, and they're writing from their acting instead of acting from their writing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that I agree with that.
Yeah.
You did say a little bit earlier there that you don't think the acting is that great in this movie. I'll disagree with that, but I think we should probably.
I think Jack Nicholson. He gives it away too soon.
Yes.
I think he needs more subtlety in the beginning, and it's maybe also partially the direction, but I think we needed to see, basically right from the beginning, we see how dysfunctional he is. And 100%. I think he needs to have the facade of being more functional for longer.
Yes, I wrote that right here on my sheet. I wrote, Jack is already insane.
Yes, right.
And maybe we should talk about this later in more detail, I guess. But I agree. That's something that's a little bit different in the book, but it's something I was thinking about yesterday. And yeah, like he already is insane, and that's why I think they could have gone a different direction, in my opinion, with this.
Okay.
And but we're gonna talk about that later because we are 10 minutes in and we haven't introduced the cast of the synopsis.
Hey, it was a good conversation.
It was a
you
good
know?
conversation.
It's a good conversation. Go with the flow.
Yeah, I actually I'm enjoying this. Okay, cast: Jack Nicholson, of course. Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall, yeah.
As Wendy. Danny Lloyd as Danny.
Shout out to Danny Lloyd.
Yeah.
Phenomenal child acting.
Yeah. Good.
I honestly thought that was one of the better actors in it, especially considering that he is a child. And doing that like double personality thing with Tony, that was
the Tony stuff. The Tony bothers me a bit. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I do think he's a great actor. And he didn't know he was acting in a horror movie. Fun fact: he thought it was a drama. He didn't see The Shining, the actual Shining, until he was 17.
yeah.
And until then, he only saw like a superficial, like really edited cut.
Yeah.
And yeah, they told him he was acting in a drama. In the scene where Wendy and Jack are screaming at each other, saying like that she hurt Danny, that's like a dummy. Like, that's literally like a doll or a dummy, whatever. Yeah. That's not him, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think obviously we talk about child actors all the time. It's always a challenge, but I think he was good.
Yeah, he was. Like, yeah.
And then obviously Scatman Crothers as the head chef or Dick Halloran, and yeah,
relatively small cast in this one, right? Like, I mean, you've got a lot of extras, but like actual main characters. I mean, being the fact that they're alone in a hotel, you got a couple ghosts and whatnot, but like just main characters with dialogue. There's really only like the 4, maybe 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like The Emperor's New Groove. You know, I was thinking about that watching
Great
that
episode.
movie too.
Last episode, well, not. No, as of this one's coming out, it'd be 2 episodes ago.
2 episodes ago, yeah. Nothing like plugging that. Should I read a synopsis?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I feel like this one's might be a little longer one. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, it's a longer movie.
All right. All right. The Shining synopsis. Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, becomes winter caretaker at the isolated Overlook Hotel in Colorado. Hoping to cure his writer's block, he settles in along with his wife Wendy and his son Danny, who is plagued by psychic premonitions. As Jack's writing goes nowhere and Danny's visions become more disturbing, Jack discovers the hotel's dark secrets and begins to unravel into a homicidal maniac hell-bent on terrorizing his family.
See, and like we were just talking about, to me that's wrong when he says he begins to unravel. Like you said, he's psychotic from the beginning.
Yes, I agree with you. You know what? Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. You're right. Yes, Jack is already insane.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right.
No, absolutely not.
In my opinion, the actual supernatural element of this film doesn't work for me as well as I think it could have.
No.
So maybe it's better if we do the outline, but whatever. We're just going to go with it because I'm assuming that people have seen this movie already.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the better direction to have gone with just this story as a whole, maybe it worked better in the book, but in a movie version, is ignore that you can shine, right? Like as a telekinetic ability, ignore that, okay? Like get rid of that. And again, that's super controversial, okay?
I agree with you there because I don't feel like they utilized it enough. They used it for some foreshadowing, but other than that, it was just confusing.
Right.
It was just used to confuse the audience at this point. I mean, they used it to bring in Halloran. That's how they got help.
And he just immediately dies. Oh, it just kills. Okay, I'm so mad. That pisses me off. Okay. Yeah. And I'll talk about that later too. But here's the thing: get rid of that supernatural element. When they lock Jack in the cupboard, he gets let out because the hotel decides to let him out.
Yeah.
That's dumb as fuck.
Yeah, well,
that like in my opinion, that's dumb. Like
I agree.
There shouldn't be ghosts in the hotel that do that.
That annoyed me too. Like having ghosts that interact with the scene, right? Like I agree with that, but
here's the direction I think it would have went, because I can't trash on it with giving it something that I think would have worked better.
Right.
Okay. We focus on an aspect of more cabin fever. Okay.
Yeah.
They're isolated in the hotel. obviously a dysfunctional family. You keep all that relevant. Jack, recovering alcoholic, okay, right? He's going through withdrawal. He's trapped in this cabin. He's has a wife who he's not too fond of, or a family that, not really working well. He starts to get cabin fever. The radio is cut out. They have no outside communication. And then Jack goes crazy like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that works better. And maybe that story's been done before.
Well, it takes up the supernatural elements because I feel like the supernatural elements in this are just kind of jumbled and confusing. So, you have The Shining, you have ghosts, you have the hotel as itself, you've got some random blood splashes out of elevators.
Yes.
You got these two little ghosts of girls that are sort of not ghosts, but they're ghosts, but they're not ghosts. And it just, even if you kept those elements, just pick one or two and really utilize them. Because I feel like they just randomly threw all these things in. And like, honestly, coming out of it, I was kind of confused. And I actually went home and I started Googling, trying to figure out, okay, well, how does this work? Because I couldn't, it took me some Googling to figure out, okay, so the hotel is like alive or not alive, but like aware and interfering with things. And like, it was just confusing in the moment. And you have to really like think about it and like I said, Google to figure it out. And so, like I said, they need to pick one or two things and roll with that. Or as you say, and I think that's a really important point, lean into that more realistic psychological horror, because so many horrors are just supernatural thrashers, which, that's a great thing, right? You got to make those as well. But like, where this one could have been really unique is get rid of the supernatural, like you say, and lean into like, this could actually happen, right? And just make people think like, whoa, like this is real,
Nope.
It would almost be scarier in that way, in my opinion.
Yes.
Maybe not scary as in like a jump scare with a creepy ghost face scary, but like scary as in when people are like, going out camping the next time by themselves and they're alone in the woods, they're like, I'm alone in the woods, I could go crazy, like.
Yes, it's that example of cabin fever.
Yeah.
Because I think it's misguided too. They have two throwaway lines in there. Okay? One of them is, yes, the Overlook Hotel was built on an old Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, okay.
Where's the Indian ghosts then?
Well, right? Does that explain? Does that explain why the hotel is like the way it is? Like I don't know. I think that it just doesn't sell it to me.
Right. Well, and then if you have to remember a minuscule line like that to understand the whole story, then
and the other line
that's
is
not good either.
I guess talking about the old caretaker who killed his kids.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Because the hotel caused him to do this. Right. I don't know. My brain hurts, dude.
Well, and to me, it's giving away the ending before like we all knew what was coming from the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
We all know he's gonna kill his kid and potentially his wife. We all knew it.
Yeah, it's foreshadowing to an extreme almost.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't explain things very well, but then things that he does try and foreshadow, he like over explains. Like it feels backwards, like he doesn't explain the hotel and the supernatural elements, but then he way over explains the foreshadowing.
Right. Like no one's surprised that he's starting to attack his family, especially when you see his beady little eyes staring into the camera.
Right. And he does
in 400 different slow pan-in shots over the course of 2 hours.
Right.
Right. Like now the cinematography in this film is incredible. Okay. We'll talk about that later. But yes, Jack already being insane just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that if they would have focused on just the element of going stir crazy like that, it's more believable. And then the stuff that's going on inside Jack's head, or the stuff that the hotel's making him see, isn't explained because there's ghosts and goblins in the hotel and there's spirits of an Indian burial ground. Yeah. But it's actually explained because he is trapped in here and he's trying to create an oasis in his mind of what his perfect life would be, which would be him away from his family, in the hotel, isolated, drinking and partying, doing whatever, relaxing. And not have it be like the hotel is trying to psychologically trick him, because
Yep.
it just, we're talking psychological horror, right? And I don't know, the whole shining ability thing, it doesn't work for me, because
Yep.
it just makes sense, in my opinion, that rather than trying to explain, because they don't, like, it's not explained at all, but I guess open their interpretation, rather than trying to explain that there's a hotel with ghosts and stuff like that, or not ghosts, whatever, it's an evil entity or a character in of itself,
Mhm.
and it's taking over characters and stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
causing big problems. And then having to explain what the ability of a shining is and why this random kid can shine and communicate with other people who can shine with whatever that means. Have it be like, okay, this is what isolation does to people.
Mhm.
This is what an extreme circumstance,
Yeah.
like, this is the effects of that, right? And maybe I'm sure I didn't explain that as well as I'm thinking about it in my head.
No, I
But-
fully understand what you're saying.
It's just that in and of itself didn't work for me,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I agree. Yeah. The
Sorry.
other thing that really throws a monkey wrench in is the like the big reveal at the end where they have the photo with like 1921 or whatever.
Doesn't work.
It's
doesn't
like
work.
okay, so we just figured out that he went crazy and killed or tried to kill his wife and kid. And now you're telling us he was around in 1921?
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
What?
Yeah,
Like
that
it just
work.
doesn't make any sense. And I know I was reading a review online or an article or something, and people were talking, and the person was talking about how like it doesn't have to make sense and everything. And I'm like, okay, sure, if that's the story you want to tell, but if you want people to enjoy it, then it should probably make some sense. Like,
I have 2 points. Okay?
'Kay.
Based on that exact thing. In my opinion, you can't spoon feed certain pieces of information, like the fact that we know Jack is crazy and or going
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then withhold certain key information and be
Yeah.
like, it's open to interpretation, when for half the film you're like shoveling this idea down our throats, and then at the end you're like, but wait, there's more. But it has no effect because we already know he's dead in the snow.
yeah, right.
You know what I mean, right?
Right.
So first of all, that doesn't work, and also, it's not like this movie is an example of, oh, they didn't just understand it. Like Fight Club, for example. There's a
Yeah.
lot of dudes who really like Fight Club
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, hell yeah, dudes
Right.
fighting, let's
Right.
freaking go. But the whole kind of thing of Fight Club is that, like, no, this is actually very toxic and toxic masculinity, and it's a statement on that, and it's romanticized in a way, right? But
Like every mob movie ever.
Yeah.
Just started watching Tulsa King. You want to talk like over dramatized, like the mob in movies? Don't get me wrong. Like I love like The Godfather and this Tulsa King. They're great, but like
yeah, no, I
it's
get it.
still the mob, you know?
I get it. And so, yeah, like I think there's just certain things that, whether they can be explained or not, or like it's just a symbolism,
Yeah.
it just doesn't do it. Because there's other times where I think, yeah, it's done really well,
Yeah.
but again, like,
And like the other thing, like, you know, with that maze, like the hedge maze, like they made such a point about showing it in the opening when they were touring, and oh yeah, it's, you know, huge, and you got, you know, and then, you know, they get, you know, he goes in with his mom and everything, and I just feel like that's another thing that they could have used. Like they introduced so many elements, but they didn't fully explain them, which is where another difference between novel and movie. In a novel, you can have 1,000 pages, right?
Sure.
1,000-page novel is a relatively common thing. Whereas, like, you know, a movie, you usually don't want to go more than 2.5 hours at the most, you know, for your average movie.
sure,
And so, you know, in a novel, they can introduce 7 elements like that, and they can utilize them, and they can keep drawing on them. But with a movie, I feel like you have to tone it down a little bit. And I feel like they didn't do this. They brought all these elements in, the supernatural elements, the psychological elements, and none of them got done well, right? Overall, it's okay, but like it's good, but nothing individually was done very well in terms of story elements.
right. I'm trying to think on that. Like, The hedge maze as foreshadowing, like it worked for me. That was just fine. They have the line where I believe it was, don't go in there unless you have a better hour or
Yeah, an hour
whatever
or whatever.
to get out, right? That stuff works for me. I think for me, it's like the other stuff at the end that doesn't work. Is like when they do like another slow pan in for the 800th time, and it's 1921 or whatever the
Yeah.
hell, and Overlook Hotel, and we see Jack. It doesn't work.
Right.
Like if they wanted that to work, again, we play on the psychological element. Where I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this, because think about this: when he goes into the bathroom after he's tripping out because the hotel's making him see stuff, and he sees the old caretaker, whatever, who murdered his kids. If that was a reflection of himself that he was seeing instead, and it was like a mirrored image of him who is trying to convince him to kill Danny,
Yes.
could you imagine how compelling that would have actually
Yeah.
been if he's Jack Nicholson's arguing with himself,
Yes.
good and bad, trying to convince him to kill his kid, and he's like,
Yep.
no,
I
like,
agree.
like devil and angel, like whatever.
Yeah.
I think that plays better on that thing, and then that would be a better thing to have at the end, where it's like, oh, whatever, the caretaker in the psychological thing is whoever's at the hotel at that point.
Yeah.
But it's a reflection of them, and so that's why his face is on whatever, because that's his projection of himself being the caretaker, because he's been the caretaker all this time.
Yeah.
And say the caretaker the year before would have saw his face on that
Yeah.
painting in 1921, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, that would have been a little bit more compelling.
Yeah.
And I know I said at the start, I think this is a great movie.
Yeah.
I think it does a lot of things really well, but these are some of the complaints I have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think that's the thing to remember, is that we can pick apart a movie and still enjoy it. And yeah, this movie overall, like I walked to the theater, I'm like, yeah, that was a good movie. I enjoyed it,
Yes.
But like there is definitely, I didn't enjoy it as much as, Deadpool and Wolverine or something,
This is my second time seeing it, and I enjoyed
Yeah.
it more the second time. But I found more issues with it. than the
Oh,
first time.
absolutely.
So, let's do an outline. Let's
All right,
let's do an
Let's do it.
outline.
Let's do it.
We can speed run it too, though. So we have the is it Torrances? Is that their
Yeah,
last
the
name?
Torrances, yeah.
Yeah. So we have Jack and Danny and Wendy, the family. And Jack's been looking for a new job, and he finds one in Colorado at the Overlook Hotel. Basically, they need someone to stay for the winter months while they shut the hotel down to keep production costs down, because people aren't really going there in the winter.
Yep.
And so Jack gets hired to go there with his family, who's very dysfunctional. Danny is kind of the quiet kid, I guess you could say, in a way,
Yep.
and he has this imaginary friend who he talks to, and it's not pretty sometimes. But obviously Wendy seems to be like a decent mom. Other than chain smoking in the living room like everyone did in the 80s, like it's perfect. And they get this job, and they move into the Overlook Hotel in Colorado, and start to go a little stir crazy, because they start to lose connections and
Well, I mean,
service.
Danny and
everything.
Wendy, they do their things, he's playing with stuff, and they go try and do things, and so I think they're making it work.
Yeah.
It's just Jack that's a little bit.
Yeah,
off
it's
his
an adjustment
rocker.
for everyone for life. Jack is trying to keep his writing career up while he's there at the hotel, completing maintenance work and whatever. And
We never actually see him doing any maintenance.
it's always Wendy, yeah.
It's always Wendy
That's-
doing the maintenance.
which is interesting enough. But he kind of starts to get absorbed in his work in a way, right? And
yeah.
and obsessing over this book, and the hotel's kind of making him go like just bonkers, like cabin fever, you could call it.
Yep.
Right. And we know the cabin is, or the hotel is, whatever, right? Haunted, whatever you want to call it.
It's sort of. I mean, we know it's there's something off with it, but
Yeah, it's alive, I guess.
It's
As
to me, no, I wouldn't even say that was clear to me anyway. I didn't realize that the hotel was alive until after I got home and was researching.
Oh, I'm just getting angry thinking of the pantry scene, because that just made me sad. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I have a problem with that.
Well, see, that one
it's
just
like,
didn't that didn't explain it to me, like that pantry scene. I just thought some ghost had let him out, and I was just confused as to how a ghost could interact with physical objects.
right.
And see, I didn't think of it as actually like the actual hotel having a presence until I was doing some googling and somebody was writing about that.
And I think I know how to even do the pantry scene better, but I'll do that when we get to it in the outline
Okay.
because I
Yes.
just have an idea. And look at me, Stanley Kubrick is a fantastic director, great storyteller, but I know it seems so weird. Like I think I can do that better, but there's just a few aspects that I think, in my opinion, don't work for me. Okay, and this is a highly acclaimed movie, whatever, Academy Award winning, and I feel bad that I'm nitpicky on it, but I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad actually.
You can
'cause-
always improve anything. So nitpick
Yes.
away. You're not going to offend me.
But Danny has this gift. It's like a shiner, essentially. He can shine, which means he can see things before they happen, and he can see things in the past. Very vague, but he can see things. So in the 80s, it was called shining. Nowadays, it's called schizophrenia. But that's,
Go on.
That's the plot.
So that's what that's called. No, the voices are telling me you're wrong.
Shut up. No, sorry. Not you. So, I don't know. Is that a good enough short timestamp that one?
Yes.
So we meet the head cook too. I kind of went back and forth here, but I just want to explain this. We meet the head cook of the Overlook Hotel,
Head chef.
Dick
Head chef.
Dick
Difference.
Halloran, and he's good at what he does. He can also shine. We find out that he can talk to Danny while he's also holding up a conversation with Wendy somehow, and he explains in some expositionary dialogue that you and I both have this ability, and you're not alone, and we can actually communicate telepathically, and you were born with this. And his imaginary friend, what's the imaginary friend's name?
Tony.
Tony, that lives inside of his mouth or whatever, is, I guess, maybe an embodiment of the shining. And that's how I kind of
Yeah, it's like
look
I mean,
at it.
that's the kind of his gateway to it almost. I mean, that's how it tells him things and how he can.
It's like the inner monologue, essentially,
Yeah.
like kind of being
It's a
put
way
out
of
there.
verbalizing that inner monologue. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a little goofy doing like the Tony. I think the voice is a little goofy, but to be fair, we're also accustomed to scary horror movie, The Nun, The Conjuring, whatever, Hereditary.
Well, and
We're not used to the early horror movie
Yeah.
stuff where it's still figuring things out, and so
And
I think it works.
Again, you have to remember it's also like how old is the kid actor in this? I mean, what, like
Frick,
7?
Say 7, yeah.
Maybe,
We'll just say 7.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and so to be able to understand the idea of you're playing two characters in the same scene, that's pretty good. Changing the voice
Yes.
and everything. Like, I think you have to make your expectations reasonable when you're dealing with someone like that, and that it worked. It worked for me.
Yes, I do think it's unsettling a lot of the times, and I think that's one thing that I think this movie does extremely well. I'll throw in a compliment before I go back. It's an unsettling movie.
Mhm.
I'll give it that. And dare I say, this movie must have been terrifying in the 80s. You know
Yeah,
what
I mean, as far as like you say, it's interesting in terms of
Like I was talking about this with Reed yesterday, but imagine if, like, The Shining hadn't come out that year, and instead they released Stephen King's, like, the newest version of it, let's say, with all the blood, scariness, whatever. Pretend it had the same production value,
yeah.
and then we threw it into The Shining 1980. People would have been horrified.
Yeah.
Think of Exorcist, similar time.
Yeah.
People leaving the theater, this is blasphemous, this film needs to be burned, whatever. People look at The Exorcist nowadays, and they laugh.
Yeah.
Right? Partially because, obviously, our technology now is way better with CGI and whatnot, and things look lifelike.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's because we're kind of desensitized to a lot of that stuff now.
I mean, it's also like we talked about with Ghostbusters last week, in that, like, the special effects, we look at them now, and it's like, oh, that's pretty goofy. But, like,
Revolutionary
at the time. And I
Yeah.
remember, I talked to my dad about it, who was, when did that come out? Like I don't know. He was old enough to be aware of things at that time.
Sure.
And like he said, it was like phenomenal watching that for the first time. And so it's crazy how expectations change over time as technology progresses and as we just get more comfortable with different things. And
Yeah. No, I agree. And so I think that, yeah, there are certain aspects that were like, were not scary. But I do think it would have been a lot different being like a kid or even an adult in some areas 45 years ago, seeing this film. And I think it works. And the fact that it's still unsettling is a good thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I do think I keep bumping this. I do think that as a culture, almost we're not so much clutching our pearls anymore, because I think we are desensitized to huge amounts of graphic violence, like
Deadpool.
Imagine watching The Boys. You wake up and watch The Boys on a Saturday morning on the 90s. That would be insane.
Yeah,
that wouldn't air.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. I think we started to let some things slip.
Even like swearing.
Sure.
Was there a single swear in this movie?
I'm not sure.
I don't recall very many, if any. And now most movies nowadays, there's a lot of swears in them and stuff too.
Right.
Like, that's another thing that has changed, is the language like that.
Well, the MPAA, like the rating system, showed this trailer, but they wouldn't play the trailer on TV because the elevator shot with the bloody doors, and that was in the trailer. So rather than getting rid of it, Stanley Kubrick told the MPAA that it was rusty water.
Oh, I thought you were going to say to go, stick it.
No, that it was rusty water, or like water that had been rusted in the trailer, because of like the dirty hotel or whatever, and that it wasn't blood. And so they said, "Oh, all right, fine." They aired the trailer, right? Because blood and stuff like that was like a no. They aired the trailer, and everything was fine. But come time of release, it was not rusty water. It was blood.
That's funny.
Yeah. That's just a fun little fact.
And clever, clever.
And I figure that fits in there because, like I said, they wouldn't have even allowed the trailer to play, right? But they did because of a lie, right?
Imagine if they saw Deadpool and Wolverine.
Exactly. And
the amount of blood in that movie.
Right. We watched Deadpool and Wolverine while we eat popcorn and we're smiling.
And
laughing. But if I showed someone in the 80s Deadpool and Wolverine, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? Like it's just different, right? And I'm not saying everyone was like that, but I think
the average mindset has changed.
Just the vast majority of what's allowed and what's not allowed has changed so differently, right? And we've kind of moved away. Like obviously there's things that we don't do anymore, or as people. I wasn't alive in the 80s, but you know what I mean? Yeah. There's different changes, and so I do think in terms of like graphic violence, coarse language in media, that's tenfold now, right? Because it's more acceptable.
The other thing that's changed, you look at like smoking is one of the things you'll see when you're looking at the ratings. It'd be like PG-13 contains smoking. Like that's one of the warning things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you looked at a movie in the 80s, that would not be a thing because it was just so much more common. So that's an example of something where something has changed like that.
Ghostbusters last week, this film this week.
Yeah.
Wayne's World. Everyone's smoking a cigarette in every single scene.
Yeah.
It's less common now.
Yeah.
To see that in a film. I forget which film I was watching, but someone was like vaping, and I was like, oh, it's the first time I've ever seen someone vape in a film.
You usually don't see that very much.
What film is it? It was. Oh, what film was it?
Venom?
No, I think maybe it was the one that M. Night Shyamalan's daughter did. Are you? Which one? The Beekeeper? Did someone vape in it? Maybe The Beekeeper. I think the one that M. Night Shyamalan's daughter.
I'm not sure.
Which one was that one called? The one with like the room and the glass. Was it like The Witching something? No. What was it called? Look it up. M. Night Shyamalan daughter film. Shyamalan.
Shalom.
Shalom. M. Night Shalom, that one. What was it called? The Watchers. Oh,
The
did I say
Watchmen?
did I say the Witcher or like the Witchers? The Witches? Yeah.
The Witcher's
Watchers.
great. The Watchmen. We should do The Watchmen. I love The Watchmen.
The Watchers is
The
what it was
Watchmen.
called. And I think
The
that's one of the films where
The
I was like,
Watchmen. We should do The Watchmen one of these days.
we will.
I love The Watchmen.
We will. But I do think,
Watchmen is great.
long story short, I was like,
Can you imagine if you showed somebody The Watchmen?
yes, we will watch Watchmen.
No, but can you imagine if you showed somebody from the 80s The Watchmen?
Yo, for sure, yeah. Like again,
ooh.
it's just one of those things where now it's just more acceptable, and I'm not making a statement on whether that's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just objectively speaking,
Yeah.
and it's hard to deny that when we look at current
impossible to
media,
deny.
when we look at current media, it's way different than what it would have been before.
Yeah.
And the rating system is definitely more lenient.
I think so.
And we're not going to get into the history of that. We could do a whole episode on the history of the rating system in cinema, but we're not. We're going to focus on this because I know we're already almost an hour in, and I've been like a guy on crack, just going like.
I read a
anyways.
fact the other day.
Yeah.
Did you know that what's his face, Jonah Hill in Wolf of Wall Street, snorted so much fake crack
Yes,
cocaine that he had to go to the hospital?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen that one before, which
Yeah.
is hilarious. What was the fake coke though?
I don't actually know
If I
what they
remember,
use.
because it wasn't flour or something like that. It was like something concentrated. So like,
Leo was probably doing real coke.
yeah, probably. So we've explained the ability of The Shining.
Yeah.
So now we can kind of move on, and obviously the family's dysfunctional, but Jack is really starting to go crazy.
Yep.
He's it's kind of told in a way where we do a bunch of slow push-ins while he looks at the camera like, and then we're like, oh, he's crazy.
I'm gonna add some slow push-ins right there.
Yeah, dude. Oh man, maybe a Dutch tilt to really. It's just like, but no, he's going crazy, and Wendy's trying to kind of course him out of it. And while this is all going on too, Danny's also kind of starting to see things and do stuff. And
Yes.
and Danny sees the twins, and he sees.
play with us?
Yeah, forever. He goes to room
No,
237.
do that in this Cusco voice.
Which one?
What's his?
Hey, Yzma,
Yeah.
you want to play with us? Come play with me, Yzma. Forever.
There we go. Emperor's New Groove. Great episode. Check it out.
Hey, Peter, come play with me. Sorry.
A lot of people. They want to play with me forever.
A lot of guys, they say, wow, you're going to come play with me. Not me. I say, wow, you're a great player. Okay, that's enough impressions, dude.
This is a running theme. We just randomly interrupt the show with impressions.
Dude, I feel like I'm like a pinball machine right now. I'm just like ding, 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 ding. What is in this sparkling water, dude? I don't even know. So there we go. We've hit our short quota for today. So obviously Danny is starting to see some of these things too, and he goes into room 237, which he's not supposed to. Sees some stuff. I guess no, Danny doesn't really go in room 237, does he? He just kind of sees how the door's open. Hey,
He tries the door. Remember,
Yes.
he tries it, and then he
Yes.
does eventually go in.
does he go like in for sure? Because then I guess
No, it's not him that goes in. It's what's
Jack.
his face? Jack that goes in.
Yeah,
Yes.
so-
he tries the door though.
yeah, like I don't know. He I guess maybe he remembers that he was told not to go in room 237 because that's the no-go zone.
And of course, being a child, if you're told not to do something, you go and try and do it.
Sure, absolutely.
Just a rule.
Now, this is my other problem. Whatever. We'll ignore problems for now.
No, keep going with the problems. This is the important stuff. People have seen the movie before.
Danny comes with his shoulder all bruised, whatever, and Jack is accused of being the one who did it.
Yes.
And there's two things that could be explained. Now, first of all, you could argue that the reason his shoulder is damaged like that is because, like, they explained that the woman in the room 237 is the one that did it, whatever. Now, the theory I have to explain the whole shining ability is that since he can see things and communicate telepathically and do whatever, and he can communicate a long distance to Miami from Colorado to talk with Scatman, I think that he's almost projecting his past injury of having his shoulder dislocated by his dad.
Oh, that's an interesting, because they do mention that and they make a big point out of that.
That's my theory.
That's a very interesting theory.
And I didn't read that on Reddit or anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm coming up with that right now, like introducing that to the world right now, and I'm very proud of it. Like, it was if it was a projection.
I like that theory.
Now, again, I don't think reasonably at all we should have to explain the shining ability like that and that he's doing this with mystical powers. If we do more of the psychological aspect, like Jack is actually losing his mind, and say he fights his old self, or like the side that wants to kill Danny, and he, like in a fit of rage, he's like trying to do the right thing. Imagine this, okay? Imagine how compelling this could be. He's fighting his old self so that he won't kill his family, right? Like fighting his demons. But it's actually Danny in real life that he's fighting, but he doesn't know it because he's like filled with rage because he's going crazy. And that's like what the hotel and being stir crazy is doing to him. So when he like dislocates Danny's shoulder and does whatever, gives him those bruises, he actually does that. And Wendy sees this, but he obviously doesn't see it from Jack's perspective, but sees Danny like this and getting attacked by Jack. And she goes and like hits him with the bat or something like that. And he's going crazy. And then he's like trying to explain that he was trying to do the right thing and that like he's going crazy. And
that leads into that scene on the stairs.
But her not listening to him makes him go so mad that the demon just takes over him. And that's what finally just breaks his psyche. It's because the whole film he's trying to do the right thing and fighting this inner struggle. And then all of a sudden he's like, there's just no point, and he gives up and lets it go.
I think it's time for us to do our own version of The Shining.
Like, I don't know. I think that would work.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you come up with a lot better scenes than are in the actual movie here. A couple times you're coming up with these scenes, and I can see it. I can see what you're thinking. And
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Stephen King would have liked my version better than he liked Stanley Kubrick's. But when we do the female adaptation in 5 years with Disney, I think it's gonna be perfect.
Make sure you race swap everyone and throw some gay characters in.
Okay. I can't do this anymore. Oh, okay. There was short number 3. By the way, I hope you guys had a good Halloween. We're going to bring this back because this would be coming out just after Halloween. So Halloween was on Thursday.
A couple days ago.
So happy Halloween. Hope you guys are eating lots of candy and feeling good.
I won't be.
No.
I don't get any candy.
Oh.
Very sad.
Because your body's like, yeah, we just drank 6 Mountain Dews this week.
No. Because I get yelled at when I go trick-or-treating. I haven't gone trick-or-treating in probably 6 or 7 years.
I went trick-or-treating 2 years ago.
That is not good.
Why?
I don't know.
I think
it's for kids to me. But like, I got yelled at when I was like 12. People thought I was too old because I was really tall.
Here's my opinion. I've been super tall, right? I was 6 feet when I went trick-or-treating last. Here's the thing. As long as you're being kind and courteous and you're dressed up in costume and making an effort and making sure, like, you know, you take one from the candy bowl. It says take one and not like the whole bucket. As long as you're being like just a decent human and you're actually dressed up and you're not just like going around trying to get candy, you know, like dress up, going out with your friends and not like egging houses.
How did you ever know?
Then in my opinion, I don't care how older you are when you come pull up to my house.
Yeah.
You could be 60 and I'll give you some candy if you're in a costume.
if you're like 60, you can buy your own candy, and that's also what I would rather do.
100%. It's less work, but I do think I don't think necessarily that there is an age if you're still interested in doing it, and you're willing to make that effort. If you show up with a pirate hat on and nothing else, and a sack of candy,
Nothing else, I'll give you some ones.
and that's crazy, dude. That's insane. Throw some loonies at
The Canadian version.
No, I just think that
That's fair. That's fair. I just don't like it. But
it's you know what, it's not for everyone. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm not going to keep trick or treating.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll trick or treat with my kids, but like, if someone
what,
pulls
what,
up,
what I really wanted to do this year, I'm not going to be around on Halloween, but if what I really wanted to do was get like a rocking chair or something, dress up full costume, put the bowl out with the please take one. You've seen people do this before.
Yeah.
And then when somebody takes more than one, you startle them.
Yeah.
That's what I really wanted to do.
Yeah, I want to put a bear trap on my lawn. People.
It's even better when it's like a 3-year-old that, right? Like, you scare the living shit out of them.
Yeah, I love harassing toddlers on Halloween. This is so great.
Well, when it's like a 12-year-old, it's like, you're not going to scar them for life. But like with a 3-year-old, if they take more than one, when the sign clearly says take one, then you want to scar them for life so they don't do it again.
Sure.
All right, we're way off topic.
Speaking of being scarred for life, Jack is kind of, we'll skip ahead. Jack has kind of gone full psycho. The hotel's made him do some stuff. We've talked about different points throughout the film, but essentially, Danny, after seeing these certain visions and stuff like that, ends up with this mark on his shoulder, bruise, scratch, whatever. And Wendy accuses Jack, who is currently writing, that essentially it was his fault and he did this to him. And again, he's trying to defend himself. That's why I think if it was a projection, that's an interesting thing, because, maybe he's seen in his mind the guilt he felt like for dislocating his shoulder in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? How I think that could be compelling.
For sure.
And so it's not actually happening in a way.
Yeah.
He's just trying to relive in this tight space of like all his mistakes and trying to fight them, right, and make up for it.
He doesn't have as much to occupy your mind, right? When you're alone, you start thinking about things that that you've done, because you don't have anybody else to give you new information, right? Like,
sure.
When where you're hanging out with somebody, you're talking about things, they're telling you things, you're learning, you're discussing things. But when you're by yourself, you only can do that with yourself. So you don't have any new information to give yourself. So you're just reliving those old things, thinking about them.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Essentially, Wendy tells Jack to stay away, and she swings the bat like this and eventually hits him, and he falls down very dramatically.
That fall is just stupid.
It's interesting, like, yeah, I don't know. That scene is acted out interesting. Obviously, it's Stanley Kubrick, though. They probably did 100 takes, and that was probably the best one.
I feel bad for that stunt double.
So, whatever. It works.
I feel bad for that stunt double. Can you imagine having to fall down the stairs 100 times?
Yeah, probably. John Wick. Those guys are incredible, man.
Yeah.
So much respect for stuntmen in Hollywood. So he's kind of gone fully insane, and then Dick Halloran. I keep messing up that name. The other shiner, or the person who can shine, and the head chef of The Shining, can kind of sense Danny's troubles from all the way in Miami, and so he tries to contact the police, but Jack has destroyed the radio or taken away the batteries or whatever, because he doesn't want any contact, because essentially the spirits in the hotel are convincing him to eliminate his family, because Wendy doesn't want Jack to stay there anymore to see a doctor, because Danny's also going crazy, and Jack's like, but it's my duty to stay here and you're jeopardizing our mission, essentially. So the hotel's kind of convincing him to eliminate them in order to take care of the hotel.
Yep.
Interesting thing. Have you seen Monster House?
No.
No? Okay. It's like a movie where the house is alive and there's like an old man
Sounds very similar.
who likes people to like stay off the lawn, and everyone thinks he's just a really bad person, but it's because the spirit of his dead wife lives in the house.
This is about
And-
my dad. No, I'm just
And
kidding.
she like is very angry, but he's like an actually like decent person, but he just doesn't want his wife to get hurt. Anyways, it's kind of like that where there's like a house is alive and stuff like that, and I think The Shining here is convincing Jack to kind of do things. Not The Shining, sorry.
Hotel.
The hotel, the Overlook is it's convincing Jack to do things, but I just don't think it's as compelling as it could have been.
No, and
in my
it's
opinion.
like we said, it's not very well explained. So I don't know. I think we've hashed all this out. Like
Right. And so Wendy puts Jack into the pantry and
Yep.
locks him in there. And goes up to see Danny. The police can't get a hold of anyone in the Overlook because the
Yep.
radio isn't on. And so Dick decides that he's going to go to Colorado to check up
Yep.
and see if everything's okay, right? So
Yep.
he heads on his way to the Overlook while Danny and Wendy are kind of like figuring things out. Wendy goes to bed because she's like, okay, we have Jack trapped. There's no way he's getting out. And Danny's kind of almost possessed in a way. He's going around going red rum, red rum, red rum, and he keeps repeating that over and over again. Lots of repetition in this movie. And we see that red rum backwards is murder.
murderer. Yeah.
I don't think
Again,
they needed to.
the mirror theme.
Yeah, I don't think they needed to have
Yeah.
that whole thing. Like,
I guess the only thing that came out of that was showing her that he was really not okay and needed to be,
sure, but wouldn't just saying the word murder?
True.
If I walked around saying murder, 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 murder for an hour on end, you'd be like, oh, dude, this guy needs help. If I said red rum and then an hour later you're like, oh, red rum backwards is murder. Oh, shit. We got to get this guy some help.
By that point, I would have already bought you several bottles of rum,
Exactly. So efficiently, you know what I mean? I think the only real benefit it serves is having that mirror shot.
Yeah.
And like a reveal that, in my opinion, doesn't work. The reveals in this film aren't as good as I think they should.
Because they're not suspenseful enough. They need more suspension before the reveals. They're so anticlimactic. Like, when he finally goes after Danny, it's like, we've been expecting this for an hour and a half already.
Yes.
Like,
and that does a great job. Great action, great suspense. But the other ones, like the reveal and the painting, like we talked about, those are the ones that don't work. Those are the ones that are like, okay, we get it. Red rum. Cool shot in the mirror. Great shot.
yeah, it's cool.
The
It's very
best shot.
cool.
No. It's a great shot. One of the best. but it's just doesn't work in a way. It doesn't work, and because it's just like a mediocre reveal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. It totally is.
Maybe in 1980. Well, you know what I mean? Like a great
Well,
reveal.
people aren't stupid, right? Anybody who watched the movie would still know everything that we know.
Sure. Like, I knew red rum was murder before seeing
Yeah.
this movie, but like, all it really does is showcase that she realizes that he's saying murder with a backwards mirror shot. But I don't think that adds to the story in any way. It's not a
Yeah.
great reveal. But the movie does the suspense really well. It's not like the equivalent of a reveal you'd expect, like learning in the 80s that Darth Vader is Luke's father. You know what I mean?
Now that's a good.
That's a
reveal.
reveal, right? People were shocked and whatever, didn't even believe that leaving the theater.
Yeah.
But like something like this, showing his picture at the end on the wall of Shining is like, okay, but why?
Yeah,
It just-
right. Well, it does
it's a lot.
is just confuse you, and then you walk away. The last thing you are is confused instead of like disturbed or whatever a horror movie is supposed to make you feel.
It didn't even make me confused. It was just like, okay, that just doesn't work because also, what's the point? He's already dead on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? So show us that at the start of the film when he walks past the photo.
Yeah.
Do a slow pan and then show his face.
That only works.
Not at the end of the
yeah.
film after he's dead.
That only works in a Scooby-Doo episode where after they defeat it, they reveal who it is.
Yes. Anyways, Jack magically gets out of the pantry because the Overlook has decided to give him another chance because he really wants to kill his family.
Yes.
So the hotel magically opens the door for him and gets out. Again, if we play on that psychological element and stay away from supernatural, he runs into the door like 1,000 times trying to break free to stop the bad him from killing his kid.
Yeah.
Right? And all of a sudden he finally manages to smash through because it's an old hotel. He finally manages to smash through and then something happens, right?
Or he goes out a vent or something. There's got to be, like, it's a huge pantry. There's got to be a way out of there, right? Like, it's not.
I don't know. Maybe with mice and stuff, they don't want that stuff.
He's insane. Do you think a couple mice is going to really? He made out with a dead woman.
Wait, what?
The scene in 237?
No, but, like, I'm just saying, like, the pantry having a vent, like,
yeah.
Like, maybe that's explained because they don't want any, like, dust or dirt or mice or rodents coming
I
in.
see what you mean. I thought you meant, like, he wouldn't want to go in there because of dust.
No.
I'm like...
No. Yeah, but, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just, like... And that doesn't work for me.
There's definitely more options for a scene like that.
Yeah. Like, show him running into the door so many times that eventually the bolt comes out the other end.
Yeah.
Right? Show that if we have time to show 900 shots of Danny running around the hotel on his bike from carpet to hardwood, we can show a 2-second shot of him just and like a bolt sound coming on the door or something, right? But again, that just doesn't work for me.
That's another good point. Like, that was one shot that I really noticed when he's riding his bike and the carpet to hardwood sound. Like, they do that really well. Like, it's really neat. But what's the point?
It's a phenomenal shot. I think I don't know 100% what the point would maybe be for doing it for so long.
That's the thing that confused me the most is, like, okay, this has to be foreshadowing. Something with the hardwood versus the carpet. What's going on here? Like, you know, because they start doing that early on in the movie. I'm like, okay, that's something to make mental note of. That's a symbol. They're going to come back to that. Nope.
Maybe it shows a lack of options, like a lack of things to do. Something. Because he rides around for a bit and then eventually he sees like the girls and stuff like that. But you know what I mean? Maybe there's just not a reason to do it for as long as they did.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic shot.
Yeah.
Right? Great use of the Steadicam, whatever, the movement. Yeah. It's fantastic. But yes, if we have time to show all of that, then show us maybe some other things.
Yeah.
And again, show don't tell, whatever. You don't want to give everything away tenfold, but like, you know what I mean? I just think there's just certain aspects of me that just don't work and do it. But Jack breaks free. He goes after them. We have a great line. Here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny.
He's become Johnny somehow.
His name's John.
Jack.
Oh, John. Oh.
Somehow.
I'm an idiot.
Somehow, but it shows that he kind of goes a little crazy. Maybe
makes for a great poster.
Maybe you can say that someone in the hotel used to be named Johnny, who also killed his children, and now he's like multi-personality disorder, and he's Johnny.
Schizophrenia.
There you go. Anyways, he starts to attack Wendy and Danny, and Danny escapes, and Jack kind of leaves Wendy alone to go after Danny and stuff. And as that happens, the head chef comes, and he pulls up, and with his snowplow thing, whatever you want to call it,
It's a snowcat.
Snowcat. He pulls up, and he starts looking for them because he wants to make sure everything's all right. He enters a room, and Jack kills him.
Yeah, he's barely walked into the hotel.
And Jack.
And also, and like we said, we briefly mentioned it. Like, it's stupid he's killed so soon. But my other problem with it is he had a feeling that there was something wrong that was strong enough for him to travel from Miami
to Colorado,
get a snowcat, and drive up the mountain in the middle of a blizzard.
without a weapon.
Without a weapon, right?
Or going to the police
Yes.
first or something.
You're telling me that he's going to go out in there and just walk in and, I wonder, got an axe in the side. Like, right? Like, you're going to bring a gun or at least more caution.
Also, can I tell you something?
Sure.
Why wouldn't the police have gone? The police are like, oh, no, we can't do it. The snow's there, whatever. There's no communication. They're not going to check up or do anything. Really? You don't think the freaking police department wouldn't have access in Colorado, in the mountains, to one of those snowplows when him on his flight to Miami said, hey, by the way, I'll be driving up there in 5 hours. Can you have a snowplow ready for me? Or whatever. And the guys are like, yeah, we'll have one ready for you. Good luck. You don't think the freaking federal government would have been able to supply someone in Colorado somewhere something?
Yeah.
Just bing, bing, bing,
right?
bing, bing, bing,
and
bing,
he could have
bing.
played such a big role in that final chase. You could have made that final chase really, really neat. And I'm sure there's so many different cinematic techniques involve him in that chase somehow. But nope, he walks in and dies.
Right.
It's pointless.
Showcase the shining ability. Where he's in the car and Danny's being chased and he's trying to like direct him out of like escape tunnels or some shit. Or direct him through the maze with his shining ability.
Right.
Or do something on that shining ability. He comes in after being this mentor almost for Danny in a way that he has this ability. He's just immediately killed. You can say the only benefit he provides at all in this whole story is the fact that he leaves an extra mode of transportation for them to escape on.
Yeah, which he would have still had if he was alive because he would have tried to escape with them.
Also, like, they don't even need the transportation. They don't even need the transportation. You want to know why? Because Jack is dead. They don't need to leave anymore. They technically don't need to leave other than go see a doctor for Danny.
Yeah.
But at this point, Danny's already freaking fine.
That's true. He just magically snaps out of it at some point.
You know what I mean? Jack is dead.
Yeah.
In fact, it's more dangerous for them to leave because instead of a heated electric hotel where they do have a radio, they just need the batteries off of Jack's corpse or somewhere. They could have found the batteries somewhere. I don't know. Whatever. I'm just saying they had food for more than a winter for the two of them.
Oh, yeah.
They had all the heat and Jack is dead.
Yeah.
So whatever. They don't know Jack is dead. Whatever. Fine. But again, they just don't need. They just didn't need him. They just didn't need him. And
or if they still wanted to have him, then use him. Like you say, it's a waste.
I think he's a good character, well acted.
So much potential.
I just think again, he should have used his shining ability to help Danny get out of there somewhere, help navigate the maze. Maybe he sacrifices himself, in an attempt to stop them from Jack to buy them time. But like, he just walks into a hotel and is instantly killed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Danny senses that he was killed or whatnot, but it just it just kills me. And
it kills him.
Obviously, Danny is powerful enough to talk to him to Miami, and he's not powerful enough to talk back, but he can sense him. It's just, for me, it just bothers me.
I agree.
And
it's a low point.
But yeah, Scatman comes in, he gets killed.
Yep. Final chase ensues.
Jack chases Danny through the maze. Danny loses him, escapes the maze. They ride off on Scatman's snow crawler, whatever, snowcat. Sorry, thank you. And ends.
That's that.
Maybe in a modern day horror film, they would have had a chase where where Jack would have quickly fixed up the other snowplow or something and chased after them through the snow and tried to T-bone them or something and kill them.
T-bone them off the side of the mountain, and then they go rolling down, and they get out, and they're covered in bruises and glass because they've only just rolled down the side of a mountain, and then, Yeah.
But that's just my problem. And
I feel like we've really ragged on this movie.
I think so too. Yeah, I don't know. I have some other stuff though.
Go for it.
Okay, so the film is over there. I just that Scatman stuff just really bugs me because
it's just pointless. It offered so much potential and they didn't utilize it at all, and it would have been in this if they didn't, it would have been better in this case if they didn't use it at all.
And maybe it's a decent enough foil where it's like, oh, okay, now we've finally seen an on-screen murder, so we know he's like officially crazy. But we knew he was crazy when he was busting his head through the door.
And when
the axe
all he
and stuff.
wrote was, "No play makes
Danny a dull boy or whatever. All work and no play makes Danny a dull boy.
something, whatever it is, Jack or what? Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever
Or
it was.
Jack a dull
it was
boy,
Jack. Yeah. We knew he was crazy when there was pages and pages and pages upon that.
In different fonts and stuff.
And yeah,
Very creative set piece
Yeah.
there thing with
I
like,
do like
the
that.
columns and stuff. Different fonts, not different fonts, I guess, but like
Yeah,
different
formats. and,
formats and
yeah.
paragraphs and indents. I think that's great.
yeah,
But
it was cool.
yes, I just think there's something they could have done.
Yeah. Well, and I think
with The
also not
Shining.
using that, it ties into why is it called The Shining? Because The Shining, the ability to shine, doesn't really play a huge role,
Yeah, it shows that
right?
Danny's able to see with his ability the stuff that happened before in the hotel, which gives us, the audience, enough foil to realize that, oh, there's bad stuff going on in this hotel. They should get out because it's making Jack crazy. But like, it's just exposition to the audience, really. 'cause
Yeah.
all of a sudden, we start seeing what would be the same shining ability happening in Jack, because Jack is starting to see things, which is like why I think it's better to explain that he's just going crazy because the hotel is making him crazy.
Yeah.
But like, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe it could have been better explained where he doesn't shine at all, but the people who start to stay long periods of time in the hotel start to slowly get this ability because the hotel's trying to make them
Yeah.
have the shining, and all of a sudden they have to fight it, and you either learn to control the shining or it takes over you,
Mhm.
and you start to go crazy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just a failed thing to have him show up, drop off the snowcat and stuff like that, and then just like dip out.
Yeah.
And I just think like,
Yeah.
wasted potential. But whatever.
Yeah.
We've beat that like a dead horse. Yeah. You want to know some facts?
Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like I got sad. This film is mostly shot in order.
Really?
Not a lot of films shoot linear like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, because if you have 6 scenes in one location,
It's
you want 6 days in that location, right?
Yep.
You don't need to go back and forth, whatever.
right.
Time and money. But no, it's mostly shot sequentially because it was
Because it all takes place in one large set, basically, right?
right. So Stanley Kubrick hates traveling. He lives in London at that point. So London Studios, one of their studios there, had the whole interior set of The Shining essentially.
Huh.
The exterior was shot in Colorado. He sent a team out with like details and instructions. They did drone shots, whatever, with a helicopter.
Which you can see
Helicopter
in
shots.
one of those opening shots. This is another thing we have to talk about.
Really?
Is the titles.
Yes,
Opening sequence.
I will get to that.
Okay.
He has them do all the helicopter shots because he won't travel
Mm-hmm.
at all, and so they shot like almost linear because they could just go wherever they wanted in London.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the titles. You want to start?
Yes.
I have it big bolded letters.
The titles ruin what would have been a phenomenal opening.
Yes.
There is something about that opening that when you watch it, it's just gorgeous, and it's just it. And I remember Mr. Peters, our communication media
Sure.
teacher in high school. He used this as an example, and I think it was media like 10 maybe, and about we were talking about sound design. And so he showed us that opening scene with no sound, and then he and no titles. He found one I think that had titles removed. There was no titles and no music. It was just the visuals.
Uh-huh.
And then we were all like, having a discussion about what we thought this was about. And we were all like, oh yeah, this is like a movie from like the the 50s, and it's like gonna be like a happy-go-lucky 50s movie, whatnot, And then he played the exact same thing with music, with sound. And all of a sudden we were like, wait a minute. Right? And it's not complicated.
Yeah.
But it's so like it's like this picturesque scene, but like there's something going on here.
Yes.
And I think that you have that, and it sets the tone beautifully. And then you have these like corny baby blue.
It's the first thing I said when we left the theater.
Right, like you said, these corny baby blue fonts in the most boring font ever, rolling through, and it's just like this looks like somebody downloaded some really high-end footage from somewhere, and then used Windows Movie Maker from 1989 to throw titles on it.
Like at least use Papyrus. Like if you're gonna make a horror film, like it just
Well, and then they're just They could have done the credit if they wanted to do scrolling credits. Put an extra scene in there. Do not ruin those beautiful shots because those helicopter shots are gorgeous.
Do the freaking titles when they have that long ass scene where we do weirdly paced shots of Jack Nicholson for 60 seconds while other characters talk, and then cut back to that other character for one sentence, and then cut back to Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Do it in that scene. But it just they don't fit at all.
No.
And it's the same thing that I said to you. It's haunting. It's a haunting score. It's phenomenally done.
Yeah.
The shots are incredible. That combined, the haunting.
Yeah.
So good. So good. Fantastic. And then you put those subtitles on, and they're massive, or like the big titles, they're massive. You can't see the scenery anymore.
No.
It's not the color. The color, like, why? Why blue? Why? Do red. Do something.
Right.
It doesn't work. Do it in the corner. Because it just doesn't work. The
And
blue
they're not
is
even
so
centered.
distracting. No, they're not centered. It's a gross font. It looks like Calibri body. It's like what I would do in my grade 8 Word document before I knew what Times New Roman was. and it's ugly as hell, and it sucks me right out of it.
Right.
And they do this later in the film when they bring in the family and they move through the hills, and there's like fog and stuff like that, and they're driving to the overlook, and there is no subtitles, and it's just the music and the scene of them going. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's so good. This is one of the examples. I love opening credits. Okay.
Mhm.
I have opening credits in all my short films, and most short films don't even have
Yeah.
opening credits, or a lot of them don't. But I love them. I think they're professional. I think they're great. But I think this is an example of when you don't even need front row credits, or put the front row credits after you've introduced like the start of the hotel, and walk into
give it a
the
separate
second he
scene.
walks into the hotel, do like written by
Mhm.
Stanley Kubrick or
Yeah.
whatever, based on the book by Stephen
Yeah.
King, and do that in the corner or whatever. But don't take the opening thing where we're so absorbed in seeing this great scenery and then put massive blue fucking subtitles. This
Well, it's supposed
is
to
the
draw you
first
in.
episode I think I've sworn, actually. I'm pretty sure. And I've
matter.
done 2 F-bombs this episode because it's just
you're
like
supposed the opening is supposed to draw you in, and you remove those titles, and it does exactly that.
Yeah.
Right? You want people to keep watching. I mean, like people make a judgment on something in the first 15 seconds. You look at like YouTube like analytics and whatnot. Somebody clicks on a video, like most people decide whether they're going to watch it within 15 seconds if they actually click on it.
Sure.
I'd
I'd
argue
argue the first 5 seconds.
Right, and like it's the same thing with the movie. You need that opening scene. That opening couple minutes, that opening scene is your 5 seconds of a YouTube video. That needs to be something that gives the viewer like, oh, I want to watch more.
Well,
And it just doesn't. It just ruins it.
it's definitely different than a YouTube video because, YouTube formula is like, hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my video. I think if we're trying to set the scene for The Shining, the music, the scenery, it does it perfectly.
Yeah.
And then the subtitles just don't work. They stand out like a sore thumb. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, come on. Like, I wish the subtitles
Right.
weren't even there.
And then you're thinking about the subtitles and not the story.
Yes. And like, it's not that bad. It's not that drastic. It's not like, it just sucked me out of the film in that moment. And I had to kind of like reassess myself and be like, okay, get back to this. Just because I just remember having an issue with that in the theater where I was like looking and I was like, dang, like it just doesn't fit for me right now. And that's unfortunate when you have such great elements coming together and then there's this one little thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the editing in this film feels off sometimes.
Yeah, there's occasional parts where it's a little weird. Like I felt like the sound and the video were not synced, and not in that playback was wrong, but as in like they'd play the horror sting like zing, and then cut. And there was a delay between the reveal and the sound reveal.
Yeah. No, and like the movie does a great job of showing you all the awesome details, showing you how fantastic the set is, showing you how great the cinematography is.
Yeah.
But like I said, it affects pacing in some aspects where for some reason we're hearing other characters talk, but we're not seeing them at all because we're just so focused on a slow pan into Jack. And after 70 of those, you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
He's going
and it's
he's
like,
going crazy.
You can see that they were trying to be subtle with those things. But don't do 70 of them, do 3.
Right.
Right? Like and make those little breadcrumbs subtle so that people don't notice them, but they would notice if they weren't there.
Right. And I think that's one of those things where like it's I don't really have a stance on it because there's some older movies where I feel like foreshadowing is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like think of Sixth Sense or stuff like that, where the first time you watch it, it's like great reveal, stuff like that. In this film, I don't think there's any big reveals like that. Jack is insane
No.
because he's already insane.
He's insane.
And I think part of that is the editing. Part of it's the acting, and I think some of it's just like the direction of the story,
Mm-hmm.
right? He tries to redeem himself, and that's why I think again, if we focus on that psychological aspect, and he goes back and forth between like fighting his inner self, that's more compelling than the hotel
Yeah.
haunting him. Essentially,
It totally is.
But
It totally is.
whatever.
Fun facts. Let's give it a rating and close this out.
Okay. The set burned down in London closer to the end of filming, and
Hmm.
there was $2.5 million in production costs. Pretty crazy. So Wendy and Jack in the lounge when he's being accused of hurting Jack or hurting Danny was 127 takes. That scene was on 127 takes where he gets pushed over and he said the fall was hilarious. That was 127 takes of that scene. Now, that won a Guinness World Book of Records at the time, and I think it probably still holds that record for being the most takes in a single scene ever. 127 takes.
That's
and there's
crazy.
other examples where, like, when Scatman gets stabbed, like that was like 60 takes.
Yeah.
Whatever. The bloodshot in the elevator was done in 3 takes. Very uncharacteristically little takes. That's because it was actually like being filled up, and that was almost a year of planning.
Yeah, that would be a hard one to do over and over again. Like that's like
It took over a year to get that shot. Which is my next thing. The studio gave him a 4-month shooting schedule. Guess how many months he shot this in? Given Stanley Kubrick's long take history. Yeah, 4 months to make this film, which is
12.
an incredible amount of time.
Yeah.
14. Insane. That's 10 months longer for math people. And like we're thinking of Ghostbusters. What was that? 2 months?
Yeah.
A month, 2 months, whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's insane.
And for taking 14 months, you'd hope that it would be better.
Yeah, or something, right? And I don't know. We talk about certain revolutionary things in terms of, foreshadowing or things that did in the horror genre. That's different now that we see and more expect, right? We do have to look at it from a lens in this film where you and I have seen a bunch of horror movies. We've seen horror movies from the 70s, the 80s. We've seen horror movies from the 90s. And we've grown up with certain horror movies, and we know that Blumhouse is going to make 16 horror movies this year, whatever, and we're going to see most of them, right? And we expect certain tropes and things like that. This is an early horror movie in a way, and especially psychologically, where it's introducing new ideas and concepts and different levels of foreshadowing and thought that maybe, people aren't used to at the time, but that we're used to now. Right. So I do think a lot of the issues can also be explained. Like you have to kind of look at it in a way of like, if I was a kid in the 90s or the 80s or like snaddled or whatever, watching this in the 80s before all the other stuff I've seen today, what would it be like? And so I think that is an interesting perspective. But on that note, this was, in terms of technical, whatever, it's the first movie ever to implement a Steadicam.
Really?
A Steadicam mount.
That's cool.
So obviously lots of push-in shots, lots of following Danny around, lots of running with characters through the maze and stuff like that without GoPros and stuff like that, because first film with a Steadicam.
Cool.
So yeah, that's an interesting fact. Now I've dogged on this movie a lot.
We both have. That's been a lot of this episode.
Yeah. But I did write. I'll look at my thing. Okay, it's iconic. Okay, this is going off of what I said. Obviously, it's a pop culture staple. Everyone and their mom, whether they've seen this movie or not, knew Here's Johnny. They know Room 237, right? All those things. I talked about when I was 11 and saw Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Right. They do a 30-minute segment in that movie about The Shining, right? Before I'd even seen this movie once. So obviously this is an iconic movie. love it or hate it, you can't deny that this is a pop culture staple,
Yep.
and it's going to continue to be one of those cornerstone horror films.
Yep.
And I think it deserves lots of praise for that, and I think it does do a lot of unique things that hadn't been done before.
Yep.
And I can sit here and complain about things I think could have been better and more compelling, but it is a solid movie, and there's a lot of elements that I think are very awesome. I think the acting's great.
Yeah, the acting, I'm not, again, I think Jack Nicholson, but that also partially plays into the writing. Sometimes, like we said, like we talked about, it's hard to tell whether it's writing, acting, or both. But the other thing, I think cinematography and music, we have to give kudos to that score again. Phenomenal score. And yeah, like it's not a bad movie. There's some problems with it that if fixed would make it an amazing movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't like the haunting aspect. I prefer having him actually just go insane because it's cabin fever and he's alone, not because
a psychological thriller more instead of a horror.
Not because there's a magical power, whether it's in the hotel's burial grounds or whatever.
Yeah.
The Overlook is awesome. Fantastic set pieces.
Fantastic set.
It's incredible. It takes you in. There's so many details. Every room feels unique. Right. It's incredible. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it does a great job of feeling tense. It does a fantastic job of pulling you in after you get rid of those horrible subtitles and being like, oh, okay. It's strange in a way, right? Because we have a kid who's possessed and has this inner monologue, and he has this imaginary friend, and you're trying to figure that out. And obviously, it's a dysfunctional family. It's a tense film, and I think it does have that boiling point at the end where it's very, bing bang bang
for sure.
Whatever. Let's rate this thing. You go first.
Ooh, all right. I am gonna give this. You ready?
Yeah, please.
6.7.
6.7.
Yeah.
Okay. Leaving the theater. I was going to say 7. Leaving the theater. But the more I was thinking about some of the aspects I didn't like, it just, I don't know. And then I was like, okay, then it's a 6 for me. Right? And then I was thinking about all the things like I was saying, and I was like, would I be a hypocrite in saying like this is a fantastic movie, and then I'm so nitpicky. A lot of the ideas I'm nitpicky on are stuff that I've already seen before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's like you say. So, for me it was the same thing. Like my initial reaction was a little higher, but then as you say, I thought about it and I'm like, I don't know about this. No, like when I really start thinking about it and analyzing it and digesting it, my initial, again, I was back to like a 6 or a 6.5. But then I'm like, no, that initial feeling counts for something, so that's why I bumped it up back up a little.
Yeah, so I think I found it even ground for me at 6.5. Yeah. Because and just in all fairness, because there's so many issues that I have in terms of the story that just doesn't work for me personally.
Yeah.
Now they might work for other people. Now, again, there's so many awesome elements that you cannot deny.
Yeah.
Like that it is a solid story. And I'm just looking so deep into it that it's like psyching myself out. But if I'm going to the theater, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
There's lots of solid elements.
I would definitely recommend this movie as something that people should watch.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So again, like me personally, 6.5. And I'm sure like if I wasn't diving in so deep, it would probably be like a 7.5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or an 8. But again, I just had those issues with it. And especially the fact that it's not like a descent into madness like it's advertised.
Yeah.
Jack is already mad. He's already insane.
That's one of my biggest issues with it is that but yeah. We've talked about all this already.
Yeah. Special shout out.
That was a great episode.
Yeah. Shout out to Coliseum Presents.
Yeah, we forgot to say thank them. They had the theater packed. Like there was maybe a dozen seats left.
6 seats maybe.
Yeah. There was.
I've never seen the Roxy that busy.
No, never. Lineup was out the door and down the block a ways. It was fantastic atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, like it was so tense in that theater too. You could tell the atmosphere, and people were chuckling because again, the movie does so many slow pans on Jack's face.
Well, that's one thing I said to my dad when I got him. He's like, "So how was it?" And I said, "Well, like, going into it, like this is my first time seeing it. Going into it, it's a horror. You don't expect to laugh, but it was surprisingly comedic in certain places for a horror. Whether or not it was intentional horror, like I mean, a lot of
like
horrors
being unsettled horror,
right?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But like I mean, a lot of horrors are sometimes goofy in a way, but
Yeah.
it's goofy because it's cheesy and corny. But this was goofy as in like there was actual comedy in it, like things that I think were intended to be.
Well, it's both. I think because one of it's like you're nervous laughing,
Mm-hmm.
and then part of it's also just because like the filmmaking style is interesting in a way where it's like after someone says something to Jack Nicholson and he's just so fed up, and you see like the 80th shot of him staring into the camera, you're like, okay, guys,
All
come
right,
on.
let's get
he's
this
gonna
moving here.
he's gonna be on his
Yeah.
breaking point, but like. I don't know. Yeah, it was quite humorous.
Yeah.
But great theater aspect,
Yeah.
great environment, and I'm happy we went.
Yeah,
It was
ColiseumPresents.ca. Check them out. We're at almost all their events.
awesome.
I got some great Christmas things coming up, so check them out.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know in the comments what you want to watch next, or if you have a movie you really want us to see review.
Yeah.
We appreciate all the feedback we've been getting. Make sure to follow our Instagram at @theviewingroom_.
also our
And,
Patreon.
Patreon.
Go to Patreon and just search Dufferin Avenue Media Network.
Yeah, and thank you to Reed for producing our episode.
Yeah.
It means a lot. We'll tag him. All right, have a good one, guys.
Bye.